welcome back to the channel. I am the Dark Light Emissary, and this episode is on the Emperor of Mankind, and speculation on, is he becoming a god in Warhammer 40k? Now, the Emperor is, of course, a central figure in the mythos of Warhammer 40k, at least for the human faction, the Imperium of Mankind. He's a central figure in the Horus Heresy, and he is most likely the most powerful psychic entity in the entire setting, with the exception being probably the combined might of the 4K gods themselves, and them being his chief rival because of that threat he poses to them. Now, the Emperor is, at least was, a man. He started out that way, and there are several different origin stories about him. In the Horus Heresy book, Master of Mankind, it goes along the idea of the Emperor having been born near around modern day Turkey back thousands of years ago, and from there he grew in stature, especially as far as his psychic powers were concerned, and through his psychic might and ability, he was able to take on many different roles throughout human history, and in many different legends and stories in our actual history are attributed to actually being the Emperor in Warhammer 40k. All of his motivations for taking on these roles isn't well known, but the Emperor seems to have taken an interest in humanity from an early period of time onwards. He's involved with such things as the Tower of Babel, or it's speculated he was literally Christ in the New Testament, and that he's been other leaders throughout mankind. He's been a king, he's been an emperor before, things like that. But he never seemed to have wanted to take over all of humanity under his rule until he felt like he had a major plan and breakthrough scientifically, I imagine, to create the Primarchs and the Space Marines and go out into the galaxy and try to forge humanity into a unstoppable force and ascend humanity themselves to a godlike state, free of the warp and free of having to work to survive as a species. The Emperor himself was always a very powerful psyker, but he did go to a planet called Molech, and there he either struck a bargain with the Chaos Gods, or he stole from the Chaos Gods like Prometheus stole fire in Greek myth. He did something there which seemed to augment or maybe change the nature of his psychic ability, because one of the most important aspects of the Emperor of Mankind isn't just that he is a powerful psyker. It's that he is not only the most powerful one, but he has some just insane abilities, even by the standards of someone like Malcolm or the Sigilite or Magnus the Red. And one of the major abilities of the Emperor is the ability to seemingly change the nature of warp energy when he uses it. The Emperor is not at risk, like most psychers, to be possessed by a demon or a portal for chaos. The normal pitfalls that most psychers have to figure out how to safeguard against, I would imagine even Malkador and Magnus had to safeguard against, the Emperor does not seem to have to worry about. His very use of psychic ability seems to be an exact opposite use than what Chaos uses it for. So much so that that's where he gets his title from the demons of being an anathema to them. His very presence is destructive to the very core makeup of Chaos itself. And so some people have attributed to the Emperor to being kind of a god of order versus a god of chaos being, well, a god of turmoil or chaos. The Emperor, though, doesn't strike me so much as order as a different conversion of warp power, a purification into a different form completely. And I believe that it is so dangerous to the Chaos Gods that, I believe it's spreading through warp and destroying their territory and claiming it for the Emperor's own. And this was only supercharged by the Emperor's near death at the hands of Horus at the apex of the Horus heresy. When the Emperor was placed on the Golden Throne, he lost his mortal shell. His human body was basically dead, but his mind lived on on the warp plane, where he constantly plays the great game against the Chaos Gods. He is the shining Astronomicon beacon, which the forces of the Imperium use to navigate the warp successfully. So he's still a lot of major things. He was depicted in a vision by some Eldar as a great beacon with the four Chaos Gods circling like sharks around him. And it's notable that the Eldar were more afraid of the Emperor than Slaanesh at this depiction of him. It was kind of a shocking. They didn't expect to see that. Only a few Eldar have ever met the Emperor, Eldrad Utheron being one of them. And maybe they had some inkling of what the Emperor could be, but I don't know how much they really know. We're not really told what many of the older characters truly know about the Emperor. But what we do know is that the Emperor's power has seemed to only grow, but with his power growing, it seems to have swallowed up his old personality, his humanity, at a cost to that. When Robot Guilliman woke back up in the most recent 42nd millennium era that we are currently in, this Dark Imperium era, Robot was able to go have audience with the Emperor. And when he met the Emperor seemed to almost shout at him psychically. It said certain titles of him, like Avenging Sun. It said the Emperor said Guilliman repeatedly to him, things like that. And in his own way, the Emperor seemed happy to see Robot, but also incapable of truly expressing anything remotely human to Robot. And I think it shook Robot very hard. He's like, I don't know what you've become, Father, but I don't recognize you. But Robot did, I think, see that his father was still there in a capacity. But I've heard it speculated that it's possible with the start of worshipping the Emperor at the end of the Horus heresy with the first saint, Euphrates Keeler, that nascent presence that they were worshipping might have been the God Emperor in 41st millennium looking back through time, because as a different entity completely at the time. Because one of the very weird things about the warp is time does not exist there. And so once something manifests in the warp, it's always been there. And that's something interesting to keep in mind. It's one of those paradoxes about the warp that kind of makes you break your brain thinking about it. And that's kind of a really clever writing ploy for this universe that I love, is that the warp, by its very nature, is basically unknowable to human minds. We cannot comprehend what is there. It is not a physical plane. It is completely, emotion and psychic energy. That's all it is. And some of it is sentient, takes on a life of its own in that medium. Just like if you imagine, we live in 3 dimensions, but it's been speculated that there's a possibility of species that live in a 2-dimensional world. And so if they live in a two-dimensional world, they would not be able to comprehend us living in 3 dimensions. They would only know what their dimension was like. Likewise, us in a 3-dimensional world cannot really comprehend a 4th dimension or 5th dimensional existence. The warp is like taking all of that, but we can't even explain it as dimensions, different surfaces like dimensions are. It's its own thing, and part of that is that incomprehensibility of time. And so it's interesting. You wonder if the Emperor saw himself in the future or met the God Emperor aspect of himself in the warp. And the God Emperor told him, "You will become me." And part of the Emperor's goal was to try to fight that fate. Because the Emperor despised gods. It's part of why the Chaos Gods hated him, I think. The Emperor wanted to defeat them. He despised religion. He despised what it did. That's why he installed the Imperial Creed and outlawed all religion and struck down all the churches on Earth, all religions on Earth, before setting out into space. Ironic, he called his Great Crusade a Great Crusade, but it was a crusade of rational truth, not a crusade religiously. I think maybe the Emperor liked the ironic qualities to that. But regardless, I think the Emperor knew how powerful faith could be, but he knew that in the wrong hands, that faith could be curdled and dangerous. I mean, he lived through many eras where, bad men used faith to turn, the masses against each other for personal gain, for selfish reasons and power, to worship a god. And the Emperor knew that he could not rely on that solely serving himself. And he also possibly saw that worship in him might manifest in the warp a truly eldritch form of himself, which possibly terrified even him. He may have looked into the warp and saw himself staring back, but incomprehensibly, he might not have realized it was himself until he went to Moloch and possibly met himself in that far future that he did not want to see come to pass. And perhaps part of his work to try to cut humanity off in the webway from their psychic abilities was to cut off his own almost damned future to become this unknowable, powerful entity. The Emperor, to me, seems to me like he was a tyrant. He was a very ruthless leader. He was definitely not a good guy, quote unquote. Warhammer 40k doesn't really have good guys, but what the Emperor did have was a very powerful vision for humanity, and I believe he's ultimately a selfless individual. Nothing he was doing was for his personal aggrandizement, and in fact, that was one of the things that the Chaos Gods used to turn Horus against the Emperor, was to tell him, hey, the Emperor is looking to bring about his own apotheosis. He wants to abandon humanity. I believe the Emperor could have done that by installing a church. He would have let Lorgar and the word bearers continue their work if he wanted that. It's very possible that he knew that what Lorgar was doing and the word bearers were doing would cause that other part of himself to grow in the warp. It would cause his powers to grow too, since it was connected to him, but he was scared of what he would become from that. And I think that's a very big possibility on why he took such rash action against Lorgar. He probably didn't think that Lorgar was going to go seek out and worship the Chaos Gods as an opposite to that, but the mistake was made possibly in a fear of what he would possibly be carried away by, as far as almost like a hurricane of power would come and sweep him up and consume him and turn him into this fifth warp god of unfathomable power that would wipe away the chaos there. But would what replace chaos be better, or just a different kind of nightmare, one that had a mantle of angelic beauty to it, but was oppressive and insane, kind of like the Imperium has become? Because you look at something like the Ecclesiarchy and the fanaticism involved with some of its followers, having that be, the types of demons and the warp coming to manifestation, it would be cool to see in terms of an outside observer, us as fans, but to live that definitely would be its own version of nightmare. And the Chaos definitely are afraid of that outcome, and it's possible the Emperor was too. And it's part of that grim atmosphere, I believe, to this setting, that even the Emperor was possibly afraid of not the Chaos Gods, but what he himself would possibly become inadvertently if he didn't do anything even. it's possible he saw that future happening even if he hadn't went on the path to, become known to humanity, because the Emperor could have hid forever, basically. But it's possible he saw a ticking time bomb with chaos consuming the galaxy, so he had to step up. But by him stepping up, he would become this ravenous carrion god, this corpse god on a throne in most of the outcomes he saw. And he didn't want that, but that's what we have now. And so, in the current millennium, in the current 42nd millennium, I do think it's possible that the Emperor is being dragged down this path, and that he might still be desperately trying to find a way to loop out of that, but it might be an outcome we never see, because that might signal an end to the setting. Then I don't think the authors and the people over at Games Workshop want to end this setting. I think they want it to live onwards and upwards for many years, even though we could enjoy the setting even if they have to concluded it somehow. I don't know if we will actually see an ending to this. I don't think we will see the Emperor come off the golden throne anytime soon, and I don't know if we will ever be declared some like true god in the warp. But we know that in the later millenniums here that more evidence of this have come to light, like Imperial Saints turning into basically Emperor infused demon princes. Basically you've got the Legion of the Damned, who are basically like they're basically like demons of the Emperor, but as space marines that seem to have the souls of previously fallen warriors. And beyond that, we haven't seen too much else, but even those manifestations seem to be more common, and that power seems to be more prevalent amongst followers. Robot Goleman himself, wielding the Emperor's sword, was possessed by the Emperor for a short amount of time, and the Emperor literally destroyed a part of Nurgle's garden in the warp. So, as far as we know, Nurgle himself has been grievously wounded directly by the Emperor. And this is the first time we've witnessed a direct incursion by the Emperor into the realm of chaos through a mortal agent like Robot Goleman. We don't know of any other attempts. If in the current era, the current Beckwin trilogy of novels by Dan Abnett are involved with that, if it's Constantine Baldor involved on that end of things, we don't know if that's sanctioned by the Emperor or not, and if any of those forces are directly related to the Emperor's apotheosis or not. Not sure yet on that front. That's just pure speculation from me, thinking about it here as a flow of thought on this. Now, to conclude, really, my personal belief out of all this is that the Emperor is definitely ascending in some ways. I think that he doesn't want to, though, and I think that he is going to try to figure out a way to avoid that fate. I think he's afraid of it. I think he wanted so much to ascend humanity wholesale, and that him instead gaining all the power and might is almost like a reluctant person. Someone, today who gets a bunch of wealth and notoriety, and they really weren't setting out to do that. I guess, Keanu Reeves as an example of that almost. They enjoy to help others, things like that, and then it kind of gets away from them. The fame, the fortune, the power sort of thing. And I believe that the Emperor knew that there's power in symbols and power in manifesting those symbols, and so a lot of his persona as the Emperor of Mankind was for the benefit of inspiring humanity more than a personal pride point for him. I do not believe that he was trying to show himself off to gain worship or gain power in that way. I believe it was all in service to inspire humanity. If you're following someone who is as powerful as the Emperor, it can be pretty inspirational. If he's manifesting amazing feats in front of you, it can spur you on to greater things. And I believe the Emperor's ultimate goal was to spur on regular humans to do greater things and to help him get them to where they need to be as a species. But, as it is the case with Warhammer, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And the Emperor definitely took humanity down the road to hell while trying to get them to heaven, so to speak. And so those are my thoughts on the subject. It was something that came to mind recently, and I know I haven't put out a video for a little while, but I wanted it to be a decent one, and one on a topic that I felt inspired to record. So that was this one. And so, as always, please like and subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. For those of you who subscribed, I really appreciate it. Thank you for your patience and me getting another one out here. And please leave a comment on what you think on the subject. And please leave a comment on any requests for future subject matter you'd like. I think I'm going to be putting a Discord link again in this description that will be live for about a week. If you'd like to join my Discord and discuss with us there about Warhammer 40k topics or anything else, really. And if you want to make direct requests to me for videos. A few people on there have made some requests that I've turned into videos, and I'm going to be turning some more of them into videos. And so I'd always welcome your feedback there. So as always, bring your light into the dark places. Thank you for your time here on my channel, and I hope you have a great day or night wherever you are. Thank you.